Welcome back to the show, my fellow extraordinary Americans. For today's guest, we have Brian McDonald. Brian has spent his whole 23 plus year career in new revenue growth and focused on a client-centric sales strategy that created a track record for success by serving instead of selling people. Graduating from the Penn State University in 2001, Brian went right into sales in a corporate position and quickly realized that roles he could be entrepreneurial in were the ones that he excelled in. He's a partner at On Purpose Growth, a coaching and consulting firm that serves entrepreneurs who have ambitious yearly or multi-year revenue goals. He helps entrepreneurs build sales systems that predictably grow revenue, as well as build communication practices and strategies that are superior to traditional sales tactics or practices. He has served entrepreneurs by helping them go from as little as 75K in revenue all the way to 1 million plus in 6 to 18 months using the strategies, tactics, mindsets, and frameworks that he and his partners have put together. Brian also helps run an economic development nonprofit called the Fox Valley Entrepreneurship Center as the board president. The FVEC serves business owners in the Fox Valley region of Chicago that are past startup phase and need to accelerate. They're focused on not only growing revenue of businesses, but also focused on adding jobs and opportunities in the communities the businesses are in. Brian is what I would call an extraordinary American, and I'm honored to have him on the show. Brian, are you there?
Hey, Cosmos. How are you, man?
Doing good, Brian. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast. I really
Totally.
appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate the invite, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Brian, so I know you consult entrepreneurs and you've been in the business field and entrepreneurship. Can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Yeah, kind of like what you'd said. I've been in sales my whole 23 plus year career, and I had one corporate job, traditional corporate job coming out of college. And after a year of that, my year anniversary came up. They gave me a raise on Monday, and I quit on Friday because I realized that, uh, that just wasn't for me. And I didn't need to be in entrepreneurial uh, environments or situations. Because after that, pretty much for a majority of my career, I was recruited into companies where I was told, hey, here's a desk and a phone. Here's what we sell. Let me know when you need help. And
Wow.
that was my onboarding, right? So I had to figure out, how do I differentiate in the marketplace? How do I get referrals? How do I penetrate the market? Who is it that we actually serve, and what is it that we do well? So, doing that number of times over and over again, I realized that this type of thinking, and confirm that with my partner, that this type of thinking is needed in the marketplace. So that's basically what we're doing. Is we're on the consulting side, we're serving companies that have hit some type of sales plateau. They've tried throwing, people at it, hiring unicorn salespeople, hiring marketing companies, hiring a people who have experience in the industry, and they realize that, hey, the traditional thinking, I've tried it all. I need something, different. On the coaching side, it's a similar thing, but mostly I'm working with entrepreneurs who developed some skill or expertise in corporate America, and now they're utilizing that skill to serve small and medium-sized business owners. So, 10 years ago, they were called independent consultants. Today, they're called consultants, fractional executives, EOS implementers, things like that. And they necessarily haven't hit a plateau. They just have to figure out how to make sales work, or they've got to go back to corporate America or get a job. And they've pretty much, burnt their ships in that direction. So they need very efficient and effective ways to think about sales. And they're they don't consider themselves salespeople. They're outsourced CFO. They're a Lean Six Sigma consultant. They're a fractional HR person, and that's actually an advantage because they don't have bad sales behaviors, bad sales strategies to unravel. You can just build new, and I love working with that profile because, like you said, in 6 to 18 months, you can get on a really good pace to hit 1 million or actually hit 1 million.
Wow, so Brian, there's a lot of questions I have to ask you about this because like sales is like the lifeblood of any business. And if you have to start a business, you have to do sales. So but like when a lot of people they think of like starting a company or becoming the next big thing, like a start, they think of like Mark Zuckerberg, like the
Yep.
social network, or like, oh, I'm gonna be like doing it like Apple and everything like that. But when it comes to sales, they're like, oh a lot of like I've noticed like a lot of business people like it's off-putting to them or they have like a negative mindset. So can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about your idea of like what sales is versus the common misconceptions out there?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here. One is let's use your example of like, Facebook, right? Facebook can be a lot to a lot of different type of people because of the size they are, right? A small business owner cannot. Um, uh, what I mean by that is you have to actually focus on a market or a niche or a very specific ideal client profile to get the traction that you're looking for. I describe it as go narrow to go wide, right? Your path to success in the beginning is with a very certain type of people or ideal client profile. And then you can go wider. And that's actually how Facebook started. Facebook started with just college students, specifically Harvard, right? And he got adaptation to the platform of that. And they said, okay, I'm going to reach out to a couple more colleges, right? And now it was, and I'm going to make it up because I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe it was Stanford, Yale, and Harvard. And then, okay, this got traction, and now I'm going to go to all colleges. And then after all colleges, like I'm going to open this up to everybody, right? So Zuckerberg did this, right? So the first thing is if the fastest path to success is getting really focused and really clear on who you can serve, and realize that growing sales is you do it in iterations, right? Once Zuckerberg dominated Harvard, he moved on to other places. So that's one thing, right? Because when you focus on that niche and you focus on that ideal client profile, you get really clear on how they think, what their problems are, um, and your prospects and your referral network can identify those people, right? Like for instance, there's times where I'm going through my spiel around, I serve people who develop some skill or expertise in corporate America, and I go through that whole thing. And that person sitting on the other side of the table or Zoom, and they go, wow, Brian, that sounds like me. And because it is, right? And because it resonates with them. So when you niche down, you can talk about it in ways that your prospects can identify with. They at times self-select, and it's you're not selling, you're just serving people, meaning everybody wants to buy, but nobody wants to be sold, right?
I've
So
I've
how do you
noticed that it's one of the greatest paradoxes of like business and life, right? Everybody wants to buy, but yeah, like it's one of like the how do you do that? And then yet that's the mindset of most people. Yeah.
Yeah, and the mindset to achieve that in the marketplace is getting really clear about your ideal client profile. Like this morning, I was talking to a client. She's like, Brian, I need to work on a better strategy in 2024 because her and I are new working together. And she goes, and she presented this as these things were disconnected. She's, Brian, I need to really get clear about who my ideal client profile is. And then a different thing I need to work on is my network, right? Like, am I hanging out with the right people to get those referrals, and who are those people? And then she said, and then I got to work on metrics. Like, what am I actually focused on doing? And she presented this as these were three unconnected things. They were in the sales world, but there were three unconnected things. I said, no, actually, this is a waterfall, meaning you do that in order of what you just described, because the first one gives the answer to the second one, and the second one gives the answer to the third one, right? They're all, and it's all comes from your ideal client profile. So if you can get really clear on your ideal client profile, understand the messaging, understand everything about their world, you can then, if you're doing a referral, if you do a lot of referrals, focus on a referral network and actually find out, vet them to see if they're actually talking to that profile in a frequency. And then after that, uh, whoever your ideal client profile tells you, it tells you who's serving them and where they hang out, and then you build metrics around that, right? All three of those things are connected, and when you do them in a connected way, sales gets very simple. I'm not going to say easy, because it's not easy. You got to put in a lot of effort, but it becomes simple. And I think people overcomplicate it. One great way they overcomplicate it is they try to be everything to everybody, and that never works.
And the last thing you just said makes so much sense, Brian, because one of the key ingredients I found out while like in the business world, I'm talking to a lot of people, is that there's something called an avatar, like a customer avatar profile. But a
Hmm.
lot, like it sounds simple, but like where you got to attune to your customer base and who you're speaking to. But a lot of business people, they don't do that. Like they are more focused on the product and
Yeah,
the specifications of the product rather than like doing like a minimal viable product and then seeing what the customer base will respond to, right? Because I read this book called The Lean Startup like a long time ago, and it
hmm,
made me understand, like, I don't know if you read that or not, but
yep,
it talks about the minimal viable product and how to go about finding the customers that will respond to it. Because a lot of times we think we know what the customers want or like and what they're looking for, but a lot of times it's just in our head, you know?
totally. Wow, there's a lot of good stuff there. But one thing I would say is, um, about focus on the product and not the avatar. People never buy the thing that you sell. Never, ever. They only buy the help that they need. The help that they need is from their perspective. It has your product or service is a means to an end to that. So if you start talking about how awesome your product are, you're never going to connect. I'll say it this way, you're only going to get lucky connecting with people that buy because they're in so much pain. You're just the right place, right time. If you focus on the help that people need and talking about things from their world, you'll actually move some people who may not have been a prospect to a prospect because you become relevant to them. Um, they stop listening. If you start talking about yourself a lot and your product, people stop listening. Um, uh, and and the it's really important to understand that perspective, because how you talk about the product is something that we call voice of the customer. Here's an example. I only care about feedback, market validation, feedback loops, and like, hey, does this make sense to you, when it comes from a prospect, in regards to my product or service. Here's an example, right? Along the way, as I started working with a lot of this corporate profile, people that left corporate America to serve small, medium-sized business owners, I crossed the term corporate reject. And I ran that by a couple clients. I was like, hey, if I use the word corporate reject, would that resonate with you? Go, oh, yeah, yeah, I'm a corporate reject. I never want to go back. I hate that place, right? So I put that in my LinkedIn profile. And what I was started getting at times were people would say, hey, Brian, I saw that on your profile. You shouldn't say that. That doesn't make sense. And it was somebody who's not a prospect. They're a referral resource, or they're somebody that doesn't fit that profile. And I didn't listen to them because it doesn't matter. Because also what would happen is I would send connection requests to people on LinkedIn. They would accept it. I wouldn't say anything like, hey, like, I'm not trying to sell them something. I just want to connect. And they would message me back and go, hey, Brian, I saw that corporate reject thing on your profile. That's definitely me. And that's the only thing that matters, right? Like, the way you package your product, the way you talk about your product, the way you market your product, the only people that should matter to is your ideal client profile. If they are telling you, if there's a feedback loop of them confirming, yes, this is a way to present this, yes, that's how I talk about it, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks at all.
No, I mean, what you're saying is true. Like it's all coming down to attunement and empathy with the customer. And
Oh,
it's crazy how so many businesses like they miss the point. But I know like there's a lot of people they want to start the next big thing, but like they're not focusing like on this is the way you actually get results, right? Because whether it's like Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg, like that's like the one in like a lot like and they also did the basics at a certain point, you know?
correct, right? They used this path. Their trajectory to where they got was far, right? They had visions of huge companies. And I mean, you don't have to be a $1 billion company, right? Like you don't.
Exactly.
There's
You just
people
had
that don't want that.
No, that's true. And Brian, there was a question I wanted to ask connected to sales. So, you know, like people start making revenues, but they obviously want to increase their revenues by fivefold or tenfold times, but they often get stuck. So, what advice do you give, like do you give like your entrepreneurs that you're working with on how to increase revenue? If there's like
Uh,
one point here to talk about.
yeah, I would say the way to, 5x revenues is get really good at one avatar, get things moving, get yourself more resources, time, energy, and resources, and then pick another avatar to multiply, right? Um,
So focus
that's
one course until it's successful
correct.
and then spread out.
And then spread out because it's easier. More simple, excuse me. It's much more simple to do that because you can validate, you can create operational efficiencies that help you get to a different avatar, right? It's about your sales system is not about just the marketing and uh the finding the clients and taking them through your sales process. It's how you actually build the company and its efficiencies to serve more people as that happens, right? So, like for instance, we've got a client right now who they're in the e-commerce business, right? They help you set up um, your Amazon marketing and pages, right? Um, they're they're grabbing a lot of clients on a monthly basis, but what's happening is after 6 to 12 months, they're having a lot of attrition. Like 50% of their clients leave because there's something wrong with their internal sales system. And what I mean by that is after you acquire a client and you have them, the sale doesn't end. And something's happening that we're looking at right now is what's happening here that's making them leave, or how do we get them to ultimately stay? Because there's something going on operationally that is helping them leave. Something's not happening or something is happening, right? And when they fix that, their lifetime value of their customer is going to go through the roof, and they're also going to learn things about a couple of their market segments that we can then leverage into the marketplace to go get more business, right? So just acquiring just acquiring more sales is not the whole game. It's about becoming operationally efficient at the same time or along the way is what's going to make it 5 to 10x sales revenue, I should say.
Yeah, it's all about scaling, right? But like it's kind of like a lot of people, like I think a lot of businesses they come at thing like where they have limited resources, but with that resources they have to allocate it into a certain direction. So would you consult entrepreneurs to say that they should allocate towards marketing and advertising, or like that because it's like a lot of it's a question a lot of people have. Do they allocate into like making the product better, or do they allocate towards marketing and advertising and getting a lot more people viewers onto the product and then they build the product and make it better?
Yeah, this is a great question, right? Because this is the puzzle to put together. Um, I would say um, uh, once you start predictably pulling in clients on a monthly or weekly basis, and it's almost predictable. That's at the point where you start looking at operational efficiencies to see, if I can make some improvements there, does that give me the ability to serve my clients better, more efficiently, or grab more? Because what it turns into is throughput, right? I worked for an insurance brokerage. That was my last kind of job, and I could only bring on clients as fast as my team could process them. What I mean by that is my internal sales system to get quotes and keep customers was clogged. So there were times where, I could bring in a client that's spending a couple $100,000 on insurance, and I've got a 90-day window before they renew the insurance. My team couldn't gather the information uh, and get me a quote from the insurance broker in 90 days. So I would have to tell the person like, hey, we're going to have to work on this next year. It wasn't the fact that I could go get more sales. It's the fact that I couldn't stick enough sales through my system to actually be able to capture it. So the problem to work on at that point was not hiring more salespeople or helping me find more deals. It's how can we create a better efficiencies with the team, because then I'll be able to actually sell more, right? So you have to be, constantly paying attention to the dance. Um, and if you don't have sales and you're working on operational efficiencies, it doesn't make sense, right? You're working on something you can't capitalize on at all.
Yeah, like I was asking this question because like there's like some companies that swear by the product oriented approach. Like it's kind of like they look at companies like Apple and they're like, oh, the product sells themselves. But the more effective approach seems to be the market oriented approach, and then you build the product as it goes. Because if you're, let's say, a business that doesn't have the big resources that, let's say, a big company has, and you have to allocate your money in certain direction, yeah, it comes down to like getting the customers first and then building, as time
Yeah,
goes by.
and Apple can do that now because of how big they are. A small business is not like Apple. So it's like things in the enterprise world uh, don't translate to the small business world, just because they don't, right? The reason why uh, Apple can operate that way is because they have so many eyeballs, that they have so many people interested, where I can kind of figure out something and show it to the 100 million people that are buying from me, and I know 10 million are going to buy, right? A small business owner does not have that.
No, exactly. Like, and that's basically the thing. Like, the strategies are different in different categories, right? But Brian, there was a question I wanted to ask you. Like, in your 23 plus years, like, what was the greatest revelation you had regarding the business and entrepreneurial world while consulting all these entrepreneurs?
Wow, there's actually two things. One, and this is kind of an undertone of what we're talking about mostly here, is a client-centric approach is by far the best approach. And what I mean by that is having the client or the ideal client at the center of everything. When you have the client at the center of the product, you can design the product better, right? When you do it from their perspective. When you put together your messaging and your marketing, you do it from their perspective. You build sales process around their perspective, right? Like you could build a great sales process that's meaningful to you, but it doesn't mean anything, or it's not meaningful to your prospects. It doesn't matter, right? You built Motorola years ago had an internal process where they made, I think it was a phone that had zero defects, right? They took all these lean principles and applied them, and hey, it was zero defects, zero variants. This is a perfect product, and they couldn't sell it because it was created at the center of their efficiencies, not at the center of what the ideal client wants, right? So it was all for naught. The second thing is um, growing your business has as much to do about you working on your business as it is of you working on you. Your business grows as you grow. uh, I might suggest that your business can't grow if you don't. And it's like I was talking to a client or a prospect a couple months ago, and we've been talking for a little bit. And she said to me, an offhand comment. She goes, Brian, a year ago when I left corporate America, I didn't realize I was signing up for a personal growth injury. And I said, you just hit the nail on the head, right? That's exactly what this is, because the person that left corporate America wasn't the person I was talking to at that point in time, right? And in a couple years, the person I was talking to a couple months ago isn't going to be the same person, right? And I say this in a good way, right? This is a personal growth journey, and I'd be hard pressed if you asked any successful entrepreneur um, that question, like, "Hey, do you think this is as much a personal growth journey as anything?" And I would bet $1 million, 100% of them say yes.
Right, I had a revelation, right, as we were talking about all of this, like two things, right? So, I felt like almost like the reason why, like, the higher power makes us do
Mhm.
business and like do trade and economy is to learn two things. One is attunement and empathy with the other person, because without business and entrepreneurship, you wouldn't be interacting with other people or other
Yep.
groups or people of different religions. Like business makes you do that. Like you're like what you talked about, client-centric approach is literally having empathy and seeing everything from the perspective of the other person, which is ultimately a spiritual quality altogether. And I guess the second thing is like, yeah, self-improvement, because we have to grow as people and we have to grow and evolve into higher beings, and like that's how we find fulfillment in life. And ultimately it's about self-improvement, and along with attunement and empathy, that are deeply spiritual principles. So that's what came to my mind as you were talking about this.
Yo, so my ideal client on the coaching side, right, is somebody who the deep actual desire is for them to become more of who they are. And at some point in working with people, sometimes it's early on, sometimes it's a couple months into it, sometimes it's 6 months into it. I express to clients like, you're going to sell more when you give yourself permission to be more of you, because people buy you first, then they buy your service. And and so that's why this is a spiritual journey, right? You have to actually start accepting who you are, learn who you are, and be more of it, because that's what actually sells.
Yeah, and I would also want to add that one of the things I noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed this as well, like a lot of times the customers, like this is also was there in the lean startup, right? And it made
Mhm.
me like wanted to talk to you about it. A lot of times customers think they know what they want. They say they want some certain things, but their actions and what they subconsciously and in their actions and everyday life, like they respond to, tend to be two different things. And a lot of business owners, they get confused by that because they do surveys. A lot of them do surveys and ask the customers what they want, and they'll tell them. But when it comes to the responding side, it turns out to be different from what they say they want. But I don't know if you've noticed that during your time, or it's just like a isolated
Yeah.
thing.
No, I think it's being able to understand, um, get that feedback and that info, and then not be literal about giving it back to them, serving them in that way. It's okay under that context. How do I, structure my offer? How do I serve these people that fits that need, but they won't kind of do a switcheroo on me? I'll be transparent and give you an example. So, um, I meet people at the sales problem in the coaching, but really, my ulterior motive is to help them become more of who they are, because I know they're going to come through the sales door. So that's how I get them in my world. And then I just help them become who they are, right? We work 50% on sales, 50% on them. But if I went around saying, hey, I'm just going to help people, I'm just going to be a life coach and help people kind of, become who they are, people would say, oh, yeah, I want more of that. But then they would never actually, or many of them would never tip over and hire me. But if I go through the sales door, They absolutely will, because that's something they really, really want. And I know, and what I know to be true is they're going to have to become somebody different to get to where they want to go. And I can help them do that. So it's figuring those things out, right? That's why I gave that example. It's figuring out how you can come into their world through their view and serve them, the way that you want.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? Like just talking to you, it's like fascinating because like a lot of people like in the 99% they think that oh sales revenues, it's like they think of the snake oil salesman, but literally like what we're talking about is actually like it's based on spiritual principle of you have to attain like in order to be highly successful, you have to go through like there's these common themes of successful salespeople and people that increase revenue, and it's about a client-centric approach as you're
Hmm.
talking.
100%. When you align with that, who your client is, things happen. Magic happens.
Brian, another question I wanted to ask was like, in your time consulting all these entrepreneurs, what do you think is the biggest roadblock block in terms of mindset that people that they have in terms of like succeeding?
That's a great question. I think what it is um, it shows up as self-sabotage. Uh, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of times people think that they don't know the answer, and they do. They just choose not to choose it, right? Um, like for instance, when I give clients examples on how to approach somebody or how to think of something, they're like, "Oh yeah, I kind of thought that," and all my coaching did was give them permission to choose what they thought was the choice, right?
Wow,
So
this is deep.
yeah, so self-sabotage shows up where like I'm not going to make that choice because I'm holding myself back from what the answer is. And I know it, right? And maybe it shows up as self-doubt, right? It's these cycles. And part of the psychology around it is they're just protecting themselves. Think about this, right? I think about this for myself, right? The the person I am today is not the person who um you know, is getting paid $50,000 to come speak at a keynote event, or doing a webinar with 2,000 people on it, right? And when I think about that, I have to become somebody different. And because that is unfamiliar to me, it's scary. I have to actually give up some of the habits, mindsets of um, that I have today. So I can make an easy choice to become that person, right? It's a simple path, but I just self-sabotage. Like, no, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do that, or I shouldn't do that, or why would those people want me to come talk to them so I don't reach out, right? Or I'm not really sure what the next best move in my business is because I'm more committed to being confused and blocking myself than I am to committed to figuring it out. Make
No,
sense?
no, it makes a lot of sense. Like, and I want to add like there are two types of sabotage, right? There's like the fear of failure or like an esteem kind of issue, and on the other hand, it's like it's a ridiculous type of sabotage, but it's like the fear of being successful. Like I got
Yes.
it's like one of the most ridiculous things that goes both ways. Like for the longest time I never understood why would anybody be afraid of being successful, you know?
A lot of responsibility comes with it, right? You like there's a lot of good things, bad things, neutral things, right? Like uh and you just have to accept that because I'll make this about myself. I always make it general, we all are, but I'll make it about myself, is I'm really comfortable being who I am right now. Like as much as I have ambitions for more, I'm kind of in my not kind of, I'm in my routines, I'm in my habits, and this is comfortable. This is simple for me to make an extra 20 to $50,000 a month. I need to do different things. And new things are uncomfortable just because they're unfamiliar, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm just kind of I'm okay being this way, right? Like until I decide to get uncomfortable, I'm just going to be this way.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is a sense of contentment, but a lot of people they believe that you have to be discontent in order to attain greatness because you have to keep pushing and pushing. But it's like just like different points of view, you know?
Yeah, that's a narrative that motivates and works for, I think, a very small percentage of people in the world. However, it's taught that lots of people should adapt that. And I don't know about you, but I'm lazy. I want to figure out how to make more money in less time so I can go spend time with my friends and family, right? So,
No, I'm kind of
okay.
that way. No, like that's true, you know? That's the most efficient way of doing something.
Yep. And really where the hard work comes in is me changing myself for how I view the world, my beliefs. That's the hard work I'm willing to work on because it reaps so many benefits. It actually helps me think about doing things in my business more effectively and efficiently so I can make more money in less time. Um, I'll do that hard work, but the actual so if you're an entrepreneur and you're working all the time, you got this wrong. Meaning you're building a business so you have more time and money freedom. Uh, so if you're doing everything yourself, you're not really building a business. You have a glorified job.
Brian, I could go on and ask so much because there's so much to unpack here, but like obviously the time like it's like runs out. So I have to like go to the next question where I have to ask you
Sure.
like you know like America, it's about like it's like they say it's an entrepreneurial immigrant identity, right? The identity of America, and it was built on entrepreneurship and starting business and sales. How what is your perspective on that thing with regards to American and with regards to the American dream? And the connection between entrepreneurship and the American dream.
Oh, um, I think the entrepreneurship and the American dream are built on sovereignty. That I have full sovereignty over my whole life, and a mechanism to get that is entrepreneurship, right? It can give me, like I said, the time and money freedom uh, in the world. So I think those two things are directly connected. They go hand in hand um, because I'd imagine everybody listening to this wants more time freedom, wants to do the things that they want to do that makes them happy, whatever that is, right? And to get that, uh, you need uh, you need money, right? And that's what entrepreneurship, gives you. So I think that's the way those two things are connected. Um, uh, because to be a good entrepreneur, you got to work on yourself. If you're working on yourself, you're working on ways that on things that make you happy or understanding that, and then working on ways to how to get more of whatever that is in your life.
No, totally. Like, I think like the path to financial freedom and time freedom is definitely like starting a business, like entrepreneurship, as well as investing. And a lot of people like they're afraid to do that, but like, you know, so it's part of their identity. You know, as an American, like you should at some point think about it because that's what's going to lead to a greater set of freedom. Because ultimately, we all want to be free, you know?
100%, right? That's independence, freedom, sovereignty. We all want it, right?
That all comes from the increasing revenues, increasing sales, and yeah, it's the like in the beginning, like before we got into this consumer mindset, like we were
Yep.
producers, you know, like at least till like the first half of the 20th century, the 19th century, we were producing and building things. Like that's what made America into the nation it was. So yeah,
Yep.
like you are an example of like what I would call an extraordinary American
Oh,
because
thank you, man.
you're living the American identity in its full.
Totally. Totally, man. It's fun. It's not easy, but it's fun. Growing up, part of the American dream for me was, I imagined taking my kids to school and dropping them off every day, and that freedom would be great. And literally like 3, 4 years into my business, one day I was behind my computer sharing what I just shared with you, and it actually hit me that that's actually happening now. I hadn't noticed. I mean, it was happening, but I didn't have a realization like, wait, like I'm already there. Like I already achieved, the dream. And then it was like, okay, what's next? Right? So it's possible, right? It's if you can dream it, you can build it.
No, for sure, Brian. So, Brian, can you tell me, the audience, a little bit more about on purpose growth as well as FVEC, the organization that you're working with?
Yeah, the FEC is just kind of a passion project. I love helping entrepreneurs, and we're an economic development nonprofit. What I mean by that is me and the executive director go out and beg people for donations. And what we do is we actually help businesses who are past startup phase go through acceleration. So we've worked with some breweries, therapists. There's an electric bike company, um, a commercial HVAC and plumbing company. And the whole idea is help these business owners, CEOs, get the mentorship that they need so they can grow the business. We don't invest like your stereotypical accelerator or incubator basically is looking for companies to invest in that they can, grow and make money off of. We're not. We don't invest in these businesses. We don't take any ownership. We just pay for them to get mentorship, so we can grow jobs and revenue, in the local area. And that's just a passion project. But when it comes to on purpose growth, um, on the consulting side, we're acting as a outsourced CRO where we're doing, long-term year or two long projects or short-term projects to get a throughput of sales, right? How do we make movement that matters in the sales strategy process differentiation area that gets the sales that we're people are looking for. And on the coaching side, it's, you know, um, helping these people who broke away from corporate America never go back. It's helping them think about sales, think about strategy, think about process, think about differentiation, while our competition is, teaching them closing skills and objection handlers. We're helping people build a better system. And then once you have a good system set up, then hey, let's work on skills because you'll have enough opportunities to actually practice. But the system part is way more important.
Okay, and that's awesome. And yeah, I would basically ask the audience to definitely take a look at on purpose growth, because where you're like, if they need help with like entrepreneurship and business, and like they want to increase their sales and everything, I would definitely want them to see what you're doing and get you to consult them.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I also have my own personal website, McDonald Brian. It's Brian with a Y. It's backwards because there's a Brian McDonald out there that has websites and social media. So I got my own website that has some offerings on there, and then every single one of my socials is ends in McDonald Brian. They're all the same.
I was going to ask you that in a little bit, but I also wanted to ask if there's any projects that you're doing right now that you'd want the audience to get a glimpse into.
Yeah, one thing is we're going to be doing a 5-month program for entrepreneurs on the coaching side who want to um, 2 to 3x, their revenue. And I actually have a guarantee of that program. If at the end of that 5 months, it's a group session, we max it out at 10 people. If at the end of that time, you're not acquiring clients or you're not acquiring prospect meetings with ideal clients, um, uh, I'll coach you until you do. That's how confident I am in regards to our work and the process we take people through. If you apply the things and you follow what we're talking about, it can't not happen.
That is awesome. That is amazing. Yeah. And Brian, how can like the audience connect with you and get to know more about you and your coaching program and what you're doing?
Yeah, I would say mcdonaldbryan.com is one good way. LinkedIn is another great way. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. And then also you can find me at onpurposegrowth.com. So those are probably the three best places to find me.
Okay, Brian. I'm really appreciative that you took the time to do this podcast with me because what you shared regarding revenue and sales is so applicable, and it's so important that people know, especially if they're starting a new business, how to go about with a client-centric strategy and having achievement with the clients, because a lot of businesses fail, and this could make the difference between success and failure. So
Totally.
I really appreciate you taking the time to do so, and I would want to have you on the show at a later time.
No, awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It was a great conversation. I appreciate your time, Cosmos.
Yeah, and I want to conclude this episode by letting my fellow extraordinary Americans know that, hey, look, there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us. It's our duty to awaken it and unleash it. Until next time, bye for now.